Welcome to the Nickolas Natali Show, where we chat with entrepreneurs, experts, and entertainers to help you live a more fulfilling life and take your business to the next level. Today, we're chatting with the one and only Vinnie Potestivo. Vinnie Potestivo is an Emmy Award-winning Media Advisor who helps clients build and maintain the media platform they need to reach and sustain their goals. He's the host of I Have a Podcast and the editor-in-chief of I Have a Podcast, a Google News source that connects independent creators to opportunities to grow their careers and get discovered. Let's keep talking about Vinnie for a second. Vinnie was a television network executive at MTV Networks. He discovered talent and developed new ways to support their goals. Early hits include Punk'd, The Osbournes, Wild 'N Out, TRL, 8th and Ocean, Laguna Beach, and The Challenge. Talent brands he helped launch include Mandy Moore, Beyoncé Carter, Nick Cannon, Molly Sims, Lindsay Lohan, Ashlee and Jessica Simpson, Kelly, and Jack Osbourne, and so many more. I'm serious. There is an insane amount of celebrities on this list. He's worked closely with corporate brands like Macy's, Samsung, Nikon, MLB, Ciroc, Lady Foot Locker, AARP, and Allstate. I know I'm tooting his horn, but with a resume like that, how could I resist? Before we dive into this episode, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and share this episode with a friend that you know would benefit from the episode. Believe it or not, your shares and reviews help me reach out to guests, which in turn will bring more value to the show on how to live a fulfilling life. Riddle of the week: how do moths swim? Stay tuned to the end of the episode to find out. That was the intro. Now here is the episode. Hello and welcome. This is the Nickolas Natali Show. I'm your host, Nickolas Natali. Today we have a very special guest, Vinnie Potestivo. Vinnie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nickolas Natali. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing very well. I'm very excited to have you here.
Hey, I would rather be no place else rather than where I am right now. And we've had this a long time coming, so I'm excited. I'm excited to finally create what we're about to do here.
Well, let's see if we can live up to the hype. Here's what I got for you. Here's where I want to start. I've heard you state that a great place to tap into inspiration is our childhoods. Mm-hmm. So here's what I know about your upbringing. You're from Staten Island, you and Pete Davidson right there, the boys. You've said that you've developed a lifelong struggle of showing up for yourself, and early on, you realize that adults don't have all the answers. You've seen both of your parents battle with addiction, and a large portion of your upbringing was growing up in a single mother household with your 3 siblings. We know what happens. You know, you end up hyper successful, insanely creative career.
Appreciate that.
I'm tooting your horn. What parts of your childhood pushed you into the creative career path that you had, and what parts of your childhood have been used to your advantage in your career?
Oh, every single part. There's no part that's been left untapped, unexplored, underdeveloped. I think every part of it. I think that and awesome research, by the way, and it's awesome to get to just sort of jump into some of the emotions that I had tied to those life things. You know, I had adults in my life that weren't giving me answers but signals, and I had to learn what those signals were. Eventually, that I think led to me having some sort of like empath ability to be more empathetic in conversations and in the discovery process. So I think that's 2 things. One is that allows me to understand the energy in the room, but it also helps me understand your clarity in what you're saying and what you claim to be true. It's a weird way to say this, but like in reality casting, I would hear people would talk about, you know, an ex, and they would be hysterical laughing about the horrible things that they went through. And I'm like, wait, are you over it? Or are you like, do you need help with this? Or were you just like, is this just your favorite story to tell? Because I've been in that spot before. I got caught when I was 19, literally in the worst version of my own story. And it was an aha moment that I'll never forget, where I realized the power in our story. But leading up to that, you know, it was being an empath. It was, you know, I'm the oldest of, as you pointed out, I have 3 siblings. So anything they wanted to happen, if I was in a position to help them make that happen, then that was a success for me. If I can minimize my asks so that I minimize my ability to lose or be underwhelmed or to be dissatisfied or, you know, disappointed, that if I learn to not want something but make things happen for other people, being a people pleaser, you know, it's a coping mechanism. One of the good coping mechanisms I picked up though was my ability to sleep anywhere.
Oh.
When it got
Nice.
loud in my house, when dad came home, when things happened at night, if I go to sleep and wake up in the morning, everything tended to be better in the morning. So when I get
Yeah.
really stressed out and anxiety, I can go to sleep and I can like release and then come back in, and that's one of the ways that I actually have to control my anxiety. I haven't quite figured out how to turn that into a superpower, other than just like I have the ability to sleep when it's time to go to sleep. Um,
Yeah.
because being creative, you have weird hours, a lot of other people's hours. But being a people pleaser helped me at MTV make dreams
Mm.
come true for everyone that I worked with.
Yeah.
Because I had that relationship with my brothers and sister, I also had a very similar relationship to all the people I worked with. It's a weird thing to say, not even as like friends. We treated each other as like Mandy Moore felt more to me like my little sister than a celebrity or even a friend, to be honest. I told her everything that I possibly could, because there was like no, when you're siblings, there's like no secrets. We have to know everything.
Yeah.
And back then there's a lot of gating, a lot of gating information,
Yeah.
and I hate bringing up Britney Spears and Mandy in the same sentence. Looking back 20 years ago, I think Mandy had a team around her that gave her access to reality, to like real reality. And Mandy didn't have the level of media pressure that Britney had, and they weren't the same stakes. I understand, but look at the results, right? So that being said, it was learning to collaborate with my family, learning to collaborate with artists, and I treated them like family. So there was no specific show that ever felt transactional, because our relationship superseded show by show. And I think that's an approach, now that I think about it, that's more of a familial approach to collaborating. And maybe that's why I loved collaborating on shows that were about families, because I worked on Housewives of New Jersey, which, if you look at all the Housewife franchises, is literally about an extended family. Osbournes, Newlyweds. Like I do pretty well with family driven narratives, and I have to think about that a bit. So I appreciate the framing of this question and where it's let me down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just from the research that I've seen in like the episodes that I've listened to on other people, it you're the way you talk with people, the way you connect with people, exactly what you're saying. The relationship has superseded like the career intention. Like it seems like you've always put the people first, the person first, and I think that's the way to do it, because at the end of the day, you lose your job, you don't lose, hopefully you wouldn't lose your friends when you lose your job or something like that.
It's so and by the way, and the opposite is you lose your job and then like you push your friends away because you think you're not worthy of their friendship, because you're no longer totally describing my exit out of MTV in 2007. and I even talk about this in so many of the podcasts of people that I worked with at MTV. When they left too, they're like, ooh, I thought I was like, I thought my time was done, so I didn't know where I fell. And it's those relationships that matter the most. I would get so bummed out when it's show business, not like show friendship.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it literally is about like us.
Yeah.
And I think that's what attracts me to podcasting over television right now. Why I'm so attracted to developing in this independent media space as opposed to the ad-driven space of television. By the way, I'm happy to get podcast to broadcast. I love that game. I'm good at that. So I'm developing podcasts with the intentionality of getting them bought by these networks that I've been working with. Because I know what it takes to get bought, and I know what they're looking for in terms of ownership of conversation. But I'm not excited about pitching ideas to networks and then on a platform ultimately that's like sort of a downward spiral where the goal and the strategy for most networks is retention and not growth. It's mostly about how do we keep people watching our platform. It's not about how do we get new eyeballs. And that defensive strategy, albeit a successful one for television, I don't believe to be something that's going to ignite the level of conversations or change that I want. That being said, I think that like Lifetime with R. Kelly and like, there's some amazing series that have come out of television. Excuse me. But A&E is not unlike CBS, NBC, ABC, Viacom. A&E and History Channel and Lifetime, those are owned by an independent family. Those are not are not publicly traded, networks. So they have different rules that they get to abide by, and that's the benefit of being, to be honest, a privately owned and funded company. Not funded, but privately owned company. And 25 years in TV, I figured if I could have another 25 years in podcasts, and if I can help create yet again another unpreferred form of media, because I always got the poo-poo on cable TV, and then it was the poo-poo on reality TV, and now it's the 4 million podcasts. It's oversaturated. 4 million.
That's nothing.
I don't know about you,
that is
but
nothing.
It doesn't that come on, 4 million, and that's like a big. So I'm excited about what we have the power to do, and I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it happen in my community and my networking and my skills and my vocabulary, more so than if I was focused on selling content to make money in the media space. That's all. I think I can make more impact this way.
Yeah, definitely a more relational approach, being able to meet people one-on-one. And I think you bring up a really cool point that I've never considered, when like the mainstream is trying to retain, but whenever I talk to creators, it's all a growth mindset. Like, how do I continue to grow and grow, which seems polar opposite. I want to touch on, you mentioned your exit from MTV. We'll get to it. I want to talk about your entrance into MTV, and I kind of want to start back in college. We're talking Wagner's College. You're at the computer center, you're wiring, digitizing some tapes. You got an engineer mind side hustle going on. But then you did something that I think is fascinating, is you posted an ad on Backstage in search of actors, but you weren't really a casting director yet. How did this come to be, and how was this kind of like a catalyst into your role at MTV?
Yeah, it's brilliant. It was literally what started my company, by the way, The Single Move. Someone had told me the power of changing my story was being present and being in the future, being present of who you are now, and making decisions in the future. And I went back and ultimately I think I walked away from that conversation and I was like, wait, did they just tell me like all I have to do to be a casting director was just say I'm a casting director? Like, that sounds like a scam, to be honest. And I was kind of mad. And I remember being at school that night, I was bummed, and I like out of like and there was no reason why I should be held accountable to being a casting director at this point, because I don't think I even said it out loud to anybody. But I thought for some reason I should take out an ad and say that I'm a casting director. I'm looking to build my files. If you're someone who's open for future work, send me your headshot and resume. 1 Campus Road, student box, 5 cent. Like, I didn't hide that I was a student. I didn't even think about having Vinnie Potestivo Casting or Vinnie Potestivo Entertainment as like a company name. I just literally was thinking, what would I need to be a casting director? And for some reason, clients weren't the first thing that popped into my head. People were. So I thought, cool, I'll put it out. Maybe I'll get a couple of dozen headshots. No big deal. I ended up getting between 500 and 700 headshots at school.
Oh my gosh!
It was a cool moment. It was a cool moment.
That's wild.
It was like a Miracle on 34th Street Santa Claus moment. They dropped the USPS, and this is when I really physically can start seeing my career beginning. Literally see that with every action, there's a reaction. This was a much bigger reaction than I thought. And as you pointed out, there's this like computer club kid in me. So I turned to databases. I went to Microsoft Excel. I knew how to organize information, and I knew how to move that information. So Microsoft Excel has something called macros, and macros basically take data and do things with them. Now we have IFTTT and triggers and some automation tools. So back in the 90s, there were macros. And if I had a database of talent, I could create macros that would automatically email or create one-sheets for people based on opportunities that I saw. So I was almost like more of an agent or a manager than a casting director. I would, based on what someone said they were looking for in their headshot and what my gut said about what they said about themselves, I would look at opportunities, and if I thought it was right for somebody, I would just email them and say, hey, here's a photocopy of, here, I saw this and I thought of you. Thanks for sending me your information. I just started sending out info, and it turned into a newsletter. It turned into an active database. It got into the hands of someone at Fox News. They were working, a producer for Hannity and Combs. Fox News was brand new in the 90s, so that was exciting to me. A new platform was exciting. I saw MTV get launched in the 80s. I didn't have cable. I wasn't so into. I was more into video games than watching MTV. I was more into playing video games, like just because I didn't have access to cable. And I thought that was interesting. Fox News, Hannity and Colmes travel the country, organize the audience list, thousands of people through my database, pick people to ask questions, track who asked questions, track who signed the release. I mean, all of these things are like toggles and checks and data points. I couldn't be happier. I was like, wait, I get to organize this stuff? And I'm traveling. It's a TV show. I got my Fox News lanyard. And that turned into an opportunity with MTV News when they were looking to cast Choose or Lose, the Choose or Lose team. And it's where we found Gideon Diego on the campus of Columbia. And who Gideon Diego is the creator, was an amazing voice and face of MTV News for a generation, but was the creator of Newsroom with Aaron Sorkin. And also, if you're watching Mosquito Coast right now on Apple TV, he's the creating executive producer. Like,
wow.
I got to work with people who became creators of shows that I like obsess over. Damien Fahey, one of the VJs, the last VJs that I got to cast, who to host Total Request Live back in the early 2000s. He's a co-EP on Family Guy. It's like the coolest. They have the coolest jobs. Those VJs. Vanessa Lachey is killing it on CBS. But it was this opportunity it was the opportunity that I saw, where I saw opportunities that I didn't know if people were closing the dots, and I literally just interjected myself. But I did it in a way that I was able to demonstrate a technical skill through that database, and that database is, I think, really what helped. That database is what helped me stay at MTV for so long. I have a couple of other technical skills. Like I when I was in high school, I was an intern at the Staten Island Basic Access channel. I learned in a control room. I learned how to wire two VCRs together. I learned how to digitize tapes. I learned how to move media. So in the late 90s, that ended up being really, when
high tech stuff right there.
The floppy disk, the hard disk, the no disk. Like we went through it, and I learned how to survive. The HD, Blu-ray, back to HD, up to 4K. Yeah. So I've been, if you're not mindful of the media that you're creating, the longevity, the life shelf of that media matters, right? If you're not creating right now in 4K, then I don't believe you're creating for content in perpetuity, knowing that there's going to be a 4K mandate soon in our future for the level of quality and experience people want. And I think my Apple Mac has 1080. I think I have a camera that is my phone. I had a 2020 Mac, so I have a 720 camera and a 1080 extension that I was able to get for $30 off of Amazon.
Nice.
But that matters. And I realized I was the one making the decision to put me in not HD. And clarity. Clarity sends a clear signal. I mean, you want to cut through the clutter. Have a really clean, tight, video, especially in this day and age of Zoom calls and, like what we're lucky we're using a premium platform now to record. It really helps us stand out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is something to be said about the life shelf of content and thinking ahead in that way, because time moves quick. And if you're only looking at your feet the whole time, you might miss the boat on what could have been for 10, 5, 15 years out, where your content could have lived.
And here's what happens, for example. So if you're not recording in 4K, it may be more difficult to get segments or even shows on Verizon or Cox or Comcast or some of the AVODs, some of the advertising video on demand, the Tubies and some of those other platforms that we're seeing other podcasts on. Next year, I'm recommending all of my clients to be shooting in 4K because I had this issue happen when SD went to HD, and Verizon, specifically Verizon and Sony, stopped ingesting. They stopped taking SD footage because they didn't want to take it off, and they stopped taking 720, and they're still taking obviously 1080. But I can see in the future, in the very near future, where companies, platforms say we're only bringing in 4K footage or 50%. You remember on TV where 50% of the TV show used to be in HD, and then we kind of had an HD and an SD feed for a little bit on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's gone. Now that SD feed is gone, standard definition is gone. It's strictly high definition. I think that's happening in 4K too, and I think that it's going to be more difficult to actually place content knowing that it's going to expire. It has a limited shelf life because of the mandates that the FCC and other regulatory institutions that are going to have a say in our media very soon, by the way, or already have an extremely big presence. And a lot of that is just because of the quality. Otherwise it's not
a benchmark.
It's really, exactly.
Hi friends, this is Nickolas, Natali, and every Friday at 6 a.m. I bring you a delicious and tasty episode to help you quench your thirst for living a more fulfilling life and leveling up your business. If you're tuning in right now, consider this your sign from something other than yourself to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Leave a review, screenshot it, share it to your Instagram, tagging me at Nickolas Natali so I can reshare it. Send this episode to 2 of your friends that you think would enjoy this episode. All right, back to it.
To your point, Netflix, don't quote me on this, but I think it's for 2 reasons. I think it's for like a standard operating procedure, and I think it's also for, like you're saying, quality. Their shows, they almost have I don't want to say almost because I'm fairly certain they have a mandate as to what cameras can be used, what angles can be shot, and how each show is to be shot to ensure quality. And if you don't, they're not going to pick your show up, which is kind of a testament to if you're not with the times, you're going to get left behind, or at least if you don't fall into the standard of what they deem as high quality, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. So by the way, so that's great to know. Yeah, there's a lot of networks that will have mandates, and again, they change based on the FCC and the governing agencies that demand and dictate how video is transmitted in the States, internationally, digitally, cellularly. There's a lot of different rules, especially Netflix, which is I'm present on every device possible, from my watch to everything has Netflix. My Oculus has Netflix built into it, so I like that. I actually like that. I like the Netflix room in Oculus. It's like a weird experience, like a private little seating room.
Yeah, you're in your own movie theater.
Yeah, it's weird.
Let's talk about, this is something I'm fascinated by. So your time at MTV, talking 98 to 2007, you said that no one hears no more than the casting director. And this was eye-opening to me because I never considered that. I always thought about the talent or the actor that's getting the rejection and they're like telling their friends, oh man. Can you expand on this and how like the rejection feedback is baked into the casting system a little bit?
Yeah, well, because it's so performative, right? And so much of the audition experience is usually one-on-one or 1-on-4. It's a pretty intimate, room where that conversation is happening. This concept that no one in the industry hears the answer no more than the casting director, it's really a call out to me being in the center, in the middle. I hear no twofold. I hear no when I'm talking to producers and I'm pitching talent and I'm trying to move them that side. And there's a version of no, I have to be honest, there's a version of no that I give in real life. When I was an active casting director, I was, how do I say, aware of my opinion and aware of my power. And here's the difference. My opinion matters in the room. It's my opinion and it's finite. My power, I know, is out of my control as a casting director. All I can do is submit you to my producers and try to frame you in a certain way. And some of that framing is done in our interview, and it's just like what you give me. Some of that framing is who I put on the tape before you and who I put on the tape after you, and how in that experience that I let the producer go on when they're trying to make a decision. Sometimes I have to give them something they can say. So I don't know if I should say, well, I can say this now because it's not my strategy. So here's my strategy, casting directors, if you're out there. Here's what I would do if I were you. Give them something they can say no to first. Confidence comes from no. If you can get a producer to give you no is, by the way, no is the easiest answer in the industry to get. No is right. So, and it's also one of the most difficult, but no is way easier than a yes. If you can get the no, you're that much closer to the yes. If they feel like they've gone through the system, due diligence was done, and they've made an opinion that created boundaries so they can focus on other talent, then you're more likely to get them to say yes. So normally speaking, I don't know if I should say this or not, but normally speaking, the first person in my reel, it could be 50-50, but it's usually the person that I'm not gung-ho on. It's usually the person that I think they might dig. But I'm going to show them in the second submission what they were missing. I'm going to show them in the second submission what they didn't get. And those are the things you can't ask for, because those are the things that come up in the room that are genius and magical. And I can point out to everyone I've ever worked with pretty much what like magical moment happened in their casting tape that we put in there, that I put in with the intentionality of knowing that the guys in the room were going to react to this joke, the women in the room were going to react to this joke, the executives in this room weren't going to get the joke, and we're going to ask the kids what it meant, and we're going to love the fact that we had someone coming in and we're able to teach up instead of learn down. And I think that that's like a fun, like MTV loved that. MTV loved lateral learning, peer-to-peer learning. That was, I learned, that's because MTV taught me how important it was to get people in the room. And I was lucky to get to MTV after MTV Raps and a big cultural revolution that happened. I'm not saying it was anywhere close to where it should have been, but after a big conversation happened, I was lucky to get there. And the women, the people that I learned from were just, I'm so eternally grateful for that. But yeah, it's those skills, it's those raw, real skills, and they keep you relevant. And those raw, real skills, when unfortunately there are waves at networks of firings, and we just heard about Twitter recently, and this happens in media. This is unfortunate, but this is the cycle, especially for publicly owned companies. So, and then Twitter leaving that category, but still, this is the result of being a publicly owned company, is some of that inflation and manpower and a real need for bottom line. And we can operate differently in this individual market, in this independent market of creativity. And I like that. I like that creatives can have a podcast, business owners can have a podcast, and it's still intellectual property that we have rights to. We have something actually most celebrities don't, which is IP. Most celebrities are work for hire, trade for hire. You've heard horrible stories. Abbott and Costello had this amazing documentary where you realize that they were just paid actors. They were never once given a percentage of profits from any of their top grossing films. They were just paid to play.
Oh, no.
So when they were no longer the de jour comedy group, they quickly lost all that financial, it's actually a really heartbreaking thing. But that is the old creator economy. I think the benefit of now, thanks to people like Taylor Swift and creators who made, especially women, who made changes for equality, who asked for pay visibility to be able to have more transparency and understand what we and our colleagues and people are getting to be fair and equal. So the creator contracts that are out now are far more favorable because we have more leverage. Because we don't have to go through networks. We don't have to go through radio anymore. We don't have to go through those ways to be able to create and get our content out. And if you focus on pitching yourself as a source and not the story, you can also take clips from your podcast, create a relationship, get a relationship, build a relationship with someone at an FM, AM platform where they know what you're creating and about to create, and then be a source for them and start to get your content out that way as well.
Yeah, I think rev share and joint venture partnerships are, not that they're not, haven't always been a thing, but I think it's going to become an even more common thing moving forward in the podcast space, even in the creator space, because like the coined term of collaboration has been around for so long, but it really hasn't been used with like joint ventures in mind, which I think is going to be the big game changer for sure. Yeah,
I agree with you. If you look at what's been happening in fashion over the last maybe say 7 years, H&M, Gap, I can come up with a list, Adidas, I can come up with a list of consumer brands that have perfected, Target, by the way, Kmart, Walmart, I can come up with a list of brands that have perfected the collaboration on a retail component where I know obviously, like I'm trying not to say Kanye, but but there's that too, where you see the power. That's the power in us. That's the power in people. That's like, I'm not saying for better. Well, I'm not saying for better. I'm certainly saying for worse. But like, that's the power that people have that brands don't have, and that's why brands need to work with us as people.
Yeah.
People brands, of course.
You'll people brands.
Yeah, you'll people brands.
I'm curious about the big conversation that was had, but I also want to ask this first. And I'm gonna give some anecdotes and snippets of things I've heard along the way. You casted Beyonce in her first film, pretty sure. Mandy Moore, getting started around the age of 15, and you helped her become a fashion judge at 16, which is a very, very fun. Ashton Kutcher was launching his production company to get Punk'd off the ground, and it was almost like shut down for legality issues right out of the gate. And you were part of the iconic series Pimp My Ride coming to life, which I think is also super fun. But the point I want to hone in on is throughout your career, and I believe this is still true to this day, is you're able to get yourself in the right room with the right people. How are you able to be in the right room with the right people?
I think the easy answer to that is I was aligned with MTV. I mean, for 10 years, when you're focused and consistent, and I also at that network helped build the structure of our department. I helped build the SOP for that department and how we could interact, not just interchannel, but with other affiliate places as well. I think that I had an opportunity to create a unique experience. I had an awesome boss. That's the answer, is Rod Asa. I had an awesome boss. I had an awesome boss who I thought we were doing great. I thought everything was awesome. And then all of a sudden he's like, we should be doing these talent reports. And I'm like, but we're already doing great. Why are we got to do more? And then I start doing talent reports, and I see that these talent reports are landing on executive desks and production company desks. And now production companies are pitching us talent that they know we're interested in because we put these reports together. And then he says, well, the reports are great, but let's do a showcase. And I go, a showcase? An MTV talent showcase? I don't understand. Like, so that our executives can see the talent that we're working with and maybe make an informed opinion about if they want to use them as hosts or not. Oh. Yeah. And I'm so happy to say I just got invited to Disney's TV night. NBC still does one. And a lot of networks picked up on this. This is where diversity, equity, and inclusion came into play. This is where the conversation of being mindful of who's in the room, who's not in the room, who needs to be in the room, and has everyone in the room been listened to, heard, and evaluated evenly, fairly. This is where that conversation comes into play. So,
wow. It's fascinating. That's super fascinating. That's awesome. Do you have any I gotta know, any fun stories? Like, I saw Blink-182 rode around naked on a bike. Gosh. Mariah Carey was buying up ice cream bars one day in the office. Like, what's a memory you look back on that you're fond of and kind of halfway like, I can't believe that really happened?
All right. I can't believe that really happened. So Foo Fighters had an MTV2 special. I think it was like 24 hours of Foo Fighters. And
wow, that's a lot of Foo Fighters.
Yeah. Oh no, 48 hours. It was 48 hours of Foo is what it was called on MTV2. 48 hours of Foo, of course. Man. And my job was just to sometimes help with energy, always help with the artists who are not used to hosting, just to get them comfortable, and to work with the producer to get their words on cue cards or however it is, that we're sharing. So I think it was day 2. We were up, MTV has this area where they overlook Times Square, and we're up on this area of Times Square, and I'm there with Taylor Hawkins, God rest his soul. And the bit that they wanted to do was a hot dog eating contest. And we're delirious. We're like delirious at this point. So you just know it's going to be some sort of like weird, jackass kind of, you just know it's going to end up being that way. And they were delirious. And long story short, he ended up landing on the word weenie a whole lot during that segment and just kept talking about the weenie contest and why isn't there a real weenie eating contest, and this should be a real weenie eating show. And And it was funny, and we were all ha ha ha, and then it ended. And that was a fun day, and I remember laughing and sharing that story. A week later, they come back to the studio, and he's like, "Are we going to do the Weenie Show?" And like a couple of months later, they come back to the studio, and he's like, "It's the Weenie Guy," and I'm like, "Wait, what? This is how you're going to know me?
What's happening?
Like, this is how you know?" And I realized like, who else in the world is going to get to have this type of story, have this weird, creative, strange relationship between two creatives that were in the room together at a certain time, something stuck, and for whatever reason, well, for a lot of reasons, and I just, that those opportunities to experience those moments. You know, my first moment, by the way, on MTV, my first big celebrity moment was with Whitney Houston, when I thought I was going to ask her what it was like recording with Mariah Carey on the Prince of Egypt soundtrack. That was like what I was supposed to ask her.
Yeah.
And when the production manager, stage manager, points me out in the crowd, she goes, "This is the guy. He's going to ask you the question. He's going to ask you what it was like recording." And she goes, "I'm not answering that question." And I was like, "What? This is like my whole life. I'm supposed to like."
This is my story. My question.
Yeah, this is my. By the way, it was very, very sweet. The stage manager, and she came to me. She goes, "Well, thank you so much. We're not going to ask the question, but thank you so much." And I said, "Well, if there's anything I can do to help out, next time. This was fun. I got to just be around it." Yeah. And she was like, "Well, tomorrow we're shooting a very Busta Christmas special. So if you have some friends from college that want to come to a very Busta Christmas special taping." And I'm like, "Of course I have friends that want to come to a very Busta Christmas special." Are you kidding me? I'm Vinny from Staten Island. Like, this is like, I'm built in to do. And I went back to school, and I called on my friends. Even though I had this list of people that I hadn't quite worked with, I called on people that I knew could perform. I called on people that I knew how they would perform, that I knew I could trust them to be consistent and valuable and show up and be awesome.
Behave accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's literally how I started casting, was getting groups of people into first audiences, and then Whitney was casting It's Not Right, But It's Okay, and I got to be a casting assistant on that video, and and using my little spreadsheets and my little Excel grids whenever I can to maximize communication.
Yeah, man, I think we need to bring a very Busta Christmas back. I think that's what's been missing.
I need to go find it on
in
YouTube
all of my Christmases since.
Oh, it was brilliant. He said, you could just, I don't even need to tell you what it looks like, because you can imagine in the red, he's got a big red throne, and he's in his full Busta Santa Claus outfit. I gotta go find this. This is brilliant.
Yeah, please. Once we have it, we'll put it in the show notes just so we can relive the nostalgia. That's hilarious. I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. You have an awesome podcast, and I wouldn't say it's an awesome podcast if I didn't mean it. And it's called I Have a Podcast. And what I want to say about it is I really like the format of your podcast, because it's interview based, but the way you execute on it, and with the inserts and the snippets of like topic changes, it's like outstanding. It's more of like an experience than, just a straight interview. And where I'm going to segue this is during your time at MTV, you did something called a Walter meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Which stands for We All Like to Earn Ratings. How has those meetings influenced how you run your podcast?
I don't focus on, well, first two things. One is I don't focus on ratings, because I hate those meetings. They're triggering. But the earn part sticks with me. That Walter could have been so many letters and so many acronyms, and there could have been so many different ways to frame how important it was for our ratings to increase. But I love the fact that the executives at MTV used the word earned, and it predates earned media and paid media, and earned reach and paid reach, and it sort of helped me with the framework as social media came into play to distinguish the difference in the power between earned reach and paid reach. That being said, when I look at my numbers, sort of two ways. I look at it like a 30 to 60 day download on a single episode. It matters to me, not because I'm leveraging my podcast for ads. I'm not. I'm literally looking for singular growth. I'm looking for how much impact I'm having at the top of my podcast, because I know that that's how traditional podcast economy sort of works. But I also know that what I'm doing with Google on the back end of podcasting is going to help with what we call the dog tail. Most people like the puppy, but the dog tail is what is usually where a little bit longer, and is usually where some older discoverability can happen. And I feel like in the dog tail of my content, after 60 days is where I might be able to turn my podcast into something. The idea that they need to be timely is more predicated on an ad network and ad needs and an ad model of podcast. I don't even like giving I get a little clumsy towards the end of podcasts when they ask, how do people find me? Because I'm like, I don't know. What if they're listening to this in like 2030? I certainly don't hope I'm in the same place. I'll probably still be on LinkedIn, but I don't know about every place else. If who knows what's going on there. Yeah. And I really do. I think of podcasting. I think of it with that level of time that I hope that the conversations we're having. I mean, look, they're blasting up audio into space, into NASA. They're going to start shooting podcast episodes up soon. Like we're talkers, we're storytellers, storytellers, and story sharers. We like to be involved in each other's stories. I think podcasting is it's being treated as a timely linear medium, but there's very, very seldom do I see linear success in podcasting. Very seldom do I see publish 5 million, 10, instant success, repetitive. It's what we're doing with the podcast. I think that stand out. That's why I like helping people win awards or get credits, and some of the things I like talking about in terms of discoverability up top for podcasts, so that those are things that, you don't get. It's not a winning an Emmy or a Grammy. It's not a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's a once in a year opportunity. Those ceremonies are once a year. So like acknowledging that cycle exists helps me have a deeper strategy and stay more committed to my strategy as well.
Yeah. And I think a big point you're hitting on too is I still feel fairly early in the podcasting world. Like I think the podcasting space is still just on the cusp. Like there are some veterans in the game that have been doing it for 10, 12 years, but this is like the fact it's still growing, the fact that there's maybe 4 million podcasts, but only 220,000 of them are considered active. That's a super small number when you compare it to like YouTube channels.
Yeah.
If you're trying to stand out, would you rather stand out amongst a billion YouTube channels or 220,000 podcasts? You're probably going to have a better chance of sharing the space over here. So I think this is like still very, the beginning stages, and a huge growth can still come from this.
I completely agree with you. I've committed my career to it, and I see it happening. It's identical to unscripted programming. There will continue to be an influx of platforms and talent. What's going to be really exciting is as a community how we change with that. As a community, how do we all, when are more scripted podcasts coming out? When do we start scripting more podcasts? What does the future of scripted podcasts for us narrators look like? There's a lot of intentionality and conscious creativity that comes from creating podcast episodes, and a lot of that structure comes from the format of the episode. Now, again, because it's a little bit more inquisitive, and it's definitely a lot more one-on-one and this exchange of info. Maybe even next year we might even see the rise of the solo episodes. Maybe if I wanted to make some random predictions, I can see how do you stand out in a sea of everyone interviewing everybody. For me, by the way, the answer for me was, well, I don't want people to think I'm a talent booker, and I don't want them to harp on the fact that I have access to talent. I do want them to know I have access to talent, and I do want to talk to the talent that I've worked with to make an impact. So what I did with my podcast was come up with about 15 people that I will always use as my guests on my podcast, and I'm never going to change those same 15 people. And I'm just going to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the conversation. And
That's awesome.
I record my podcast 6 days a year. I have one 6 to 8 hour day where I sit down with two people and I record 4 10 to 15 minute episodes. So that for the month of November, for example, I have 3 Mandy Moore episodes coming out, and I can get myopic about the topic and not have to get so like, here I am with Mandy Moore this week, and hope hope that everything in press aligns, that people see that. This way it gives me 4 weeks to let the world know that this is my time I've dedicated to our conversation. Here are the 3 topics we're talking about. And this week, this is where we're talking. Input dictates the output. It's okay to watch TV if you make TV. You got to speak their language. You got to know, you don't want to spend a lot of time educating. You want to spend a lot of time entertaining, usually, if you're in television. So you need to educate yourself so you know what people are talking about and how they're talking about it, so you can get to the point.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up, man, I've been stewing on this. I feel like this is somewhat serendipitous about you bringing this up. I feel like there is a necessity to bring something unique to the table when it comes to podcasting, and I love the way you crafted 15 guests. We're going deeper every time. This is the strategy, and this is how it's going to be done. And then you're going to go on other podcasts, talk about it, chop it up, and then go deeper when you're back on your own podcast. I love that. That's going to inspire me to continue to
it allows me to be more present with a thought, so I don't feel so frantic with inspire this, impact this, ignite this. I can be linear, and I'm not trying to make anything. I'm not trying to SEOify or change, or I don't have to adapt anything at the end, because I'm using it all in from the get-go. It's all part of the alchemy of the project all the way through. Yeah. And I spend 6 days shooting my podcast, and I spend about 150 with other people doing theirs, to be honest, because it's more fun for me to be in someone else's creative space where I've given up all the power that I have as a creator, all the editing, I got to do all this hard work before I showed up to make sure that I could be the honest, truest, most like authentic version of myself and still stay on point, because sometimes I can just get chatty, and I love connecting with people. I need to make sure I'm not just taking up your time, because I've done that already on television. If you're hearing my voice, get ready to go do something. You're gonna apply for awards. You're gonna put your name on creator lists that are gonna help you get paid as a podcaster. Actually, I just came up with this list of 60 podcast platforms, directories I think everyone should be on in 2023. So I'll send it to you after this. I'm curious to see how many you're on and what you think of. Some of them are actually based on international growth of podcasting, especially with our brothers and sisters and family members in India and other countries that favor and allow English speaking podcasts to flourish.
Yeah, man, please send that over to me. I'm super curious.
I geek out over that stuff.
In the realm of winning awards, let's talk about this. After 25 years, you found yourself talking with Jamie Lynn Sigler, and you're realizing you hadn't won an Emmy because you never applied. At that point in your career, how important was being selective about who you won it with? And also, what's the actual process to applying and winning an Emmy? I want to know behind the curtains.
Oh yeah. Well, first off, there's money involved. So thank you for your consideration. Means thank you for the consideration of my money.
Thank you for the donation.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And the Academy. So it actually works interesting. You don't need to be a member of the Academy to be nominated, but you become a member when you are up for nomination, and from that point on. So if you win a nomination, there are even the Emmy Award is not mine. It's owned by the Emmys, and when I die, I'm supposed to give it back to the board, and it goes, and there's this whole list of things they give you. I'm now in the Academy, and what that means is I'm now responsible for voting in the next wave of creators who are going to be winning. So there's actually like a responsibility to it.
That's kind of cool.
All right, here's how it works. I have a local Emmy. My Emmy was won in the southeast territory of Florida, because our documentary aired on a Florida network first. And I specifically went out for a local Emmy because I knew it would be easier, to be honest, than a national Emmy. I'd worked in TV for 25 years. The only time I'd ever maybe even qualified for an Emmy, no, I don't even know, because the Osbournes won an Emmy in its first year. But I wasn't a producer on the Osbournes. I was they didn't even know what to call us back then. Talent coordinator, wrangler, assistant, something like that.
Wrangler's good. I like Wrangler.
It's kind of what they would put us in, or whatever. When I look at my title, I'm in anyway. So it's always fun to see those. It's always fun to see the MTV titles. I remember watching titles and thinking that would be cool to get there. I can't imagine one day being there, and I never thought that I would know people that got me in. I didn't, by the way. Long story short, I ended up getting in and meeting people all along the way. It was so rewarding. I don't know how we ended up talking about credits. What were we just talking about?
just the process of getting an Emmy. Who you want to
process. That's why, because I'm uncomfortable talking about winning an award. That's why I'm deflecting. So I couldn't be prouder. I intentionally, when you win something as big as an Emmy, where there's going to be press and it's going to be permanency, and this was my first, that I know that I'm tied to these productions for life, and I want to be tied to these productions for life. That's why I do that. Yeah. So I'm glad that I won on this one, because there have been some other projects that I'd worked on maybe where I wish, that I didn't have to work on it. But when you're an employee at a network, you do what you're sort of told to do. But this was amazing. Kevin Harrington, the one of the original Sharks, the guy who kind of created infomercials on television. Brandon T. Adams and his wife Samantha Rosine, and Jeff Hoffman, the CEO of Priceline. These are amazing people that are big philanthropists and making big change. And to tell a story, the documentary was called Red Flags, and where like most TV shows talk about addiction and there's like an intervention and then they go to rehab and then the episode ends. This started after rehab and followed 60 to 90 days after rehab. And we're looking at the red flags that she goes through and the red flags that we as enablers and providers and supporters, could be looking at to make sure that the people we love are set up for success. And so are we. And that's something that I had some personal experience with. So, it's a hard topic to talk about, sobriety and drugs. It's an important one. When I was at MTV, I did a show with Mario and his mom, God rest her soul, and her struggle with addiction. And we had this real honest conversation one day where he was getting ready to go on tour, and he was talking about like needing to create a job for his mom on tour so that she had something to do, but also he knew that if she wasn't with him, that she if left to her own demons, it wouldn't be good. And that pressure that it went through, and we made a documentary about it, and it was an inspiring documentary, and at a time where most people weren't talking about that stuff. That's what I liked about working with MTV the most, is they gave us time for stories. They gave Jessica Simpson 30 minutes to tell her story. They gave the Osbournes 30 minutes a week to tell their stories. And like when you have a platform that has eyeballs on it, like the youth culture that actually they do stuff. They're moving and making. That was exciting. But in 2007, I realized that it wasn't just like that. Maybe MTV wasn't what it used to be, but television was what it. We were hearing more about YouTube and AOL, and there were other platforms that were starting to get my attention. And I like podcasts, and MTV wasn't interested in podcasts, so I kind of went in a different direction.
Yeah. MTV still have a platform now to tell those stories and have those important conversations, which is super valuable. I'm curious on your opinion about this. I think oftentimes people crave fame. And I think sometimes there can be a negative connotation attached to it until, or maybe this isn't always true, but until someone reaches the point where they have it, and then they're like, "Oh wow, you did it, you're famous." What would you say is a healthy pursuit of fame, and under what circumstances is it warranted?
Just never pursue fame. That would be my goal. That would be my recommendation. Don't chase fame. Chase goals and let fame catapult you to those goals. But if you're chasing media goals, if you're chasing this idea of a certain audience on a certain show or a certain platform, let me say it this way. Not only will you be disappointed in your results, but you'll be disappointed to see how quickly television platforms are losing an audience, how quickly digital platforms are losing their audience, how much control, and how much more control you could have with an audience if you had direct access to them. So I think that when you chase fame, you lose sight of the, I don't know. I think there was a point in time where ego served on television, and I think that networks now have more public responsibility. They have more responsibility, more legal public responsibility to
yeah, that's a good way to word
you know
it.
what I mean, to ensure that what's hitting the airwaves is respectful, is dignified, is something that advertisers will want to be associated with, something that parents will allow in their homes, because we have options. It's very easy to. It's as easy now to block a channel on television as it is to block an annoying person or a negative person on social media. So we should, and networks know that, and parents know it. So they have options. We have options. You know, we don't have to be in silly shows anymore to get discovered. We don't need to do that anymore. We have more say in how and where we're being presented because we have control over that now. We used to not have control. We used to not have control because it wouldn't be seen. It wouldn't have been visible if it didn't go through, you know, a network. But now that's not the case.
Yeah, that's a great point. Let's role play for a bit, Vinny. Let's say it's opposite day.
Okay.
I want to be. I just don't want to be discovered. You know, I want to not set myself up for exposure and shareability. I want to do everything wrong into regards of, you know, people being able to find my personal brand or my business. What would I have to do to just do that? Just be terrible at those things.
You should spend a lot of money photoshopping an avocado and trying to figure out how to you should probably buy your audience and then spend a lot of money on avocado photography and in stock footage that doesn't have you in it, because you know it's so funny how and I say that because those are things that cringe. By the way, maybe someone would share something like that 5-10 years ago. I don't think any of us look at an avocado photo anymore, and for some reason, poor avocados, they get the bum rap on Instagram.
Poor avocados.
Carrera marble and avocados, they had their time on Insta.
They had a hate.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I think that it's that overproduced, over created, under intentional content that doesn't connect. I also think that if you wanted to confuse your audience, what you should probably do is take the same post and put it on every single platform all at once. Because the mistake that you have there is the social part. People really forget how much presence they have to have on these networks if they're posting content to be able to engage and connect. Like if you want to build community and have an audience, you have to show up and one-on-one and have a real connection. And that's
be there.
Instagram just turned on as of this month. Instagram just turned on a new feature that allows creators to auto publish now Reels and a couple of other ways. And that's scary to think about, the amount of people who are now just going to automate our feeds. So be prepared for a tremendous amount of content that goes out to almost a vacuum with no support, no energy, because those creators won't even be on the platforms when that content hits, because that's why they automated. Hopefully, by the way, if you're automating your content and you like this, my recommendation would be to set an alarm on your phone to make sure that you know when your content's going live, so that you can be there to receive the audience. Because the last thing you want is for something to be misinterpreted, and quickly that can happen quickly. But if you're there in the beginning, quickly it can be resolved. And also I'm seeing on social media the importance of I will do a call out. I will say, here's what I'd like to see in the captions. And then I go into the captions and do it myself. I actually show by example. And I see that helping a lot. Like when I'm on LinkedIn and I say, we're all looking for people, tell me the type of person you're looking for, I get nothing. If I come in with 5 lists of types of people that I'm looking for, then I see other people joining the conversation. Yeah, because they see how I'm talking about it, and it doesn't feel as vulnerable as a place to share. And I think that leading by example is so important, as important as the follow-up, to be honest. I know we're sort of jumping topics, but most people will send an email and not follow up, or a DM and not follow up. And to be honest, most of us are waiting for the follow-up because we're like, if this is important, you'll follow up. And the people who don't follow up are the people who say, oh, I didn't want to bother them, so I didn't want to follow up, I didn't want to bother them. Well, if you're not leading with value, then you're probably bothering us.
Yeah. Very true. I can't tell you how many LinkedIn messages I get that are just like, "Hey, buy my stuff. Just met you."
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even know you.
Yeah, like-
You didn't even ask if I needed this. You're just telling me to buy it?
Oh, thanks for the work anniversary. Thanks, guy.
Yeah. You don't even know what job I had before that. Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Vinny, we are rapidly approaching the last question of the podcast. But before we do, I want to acknowledge you for all that you're doing. I think something that is incredibly admirable about you, and I mentioned it in this podcast already, is just the way that you value relationships and put relationships over, some of the material things, and just putting people first it's incredible, because I think that's what it boils down to, and how you treat people, how you show up. I can't tell you, I've done research on other guests, but how you show up on podcasts, you bring energy, you bring like intentionality, you care about the value you bring to people. And I think that's a huge testament into the person that you are. You carry yourself with character. So I appreciate that. Appreciate who you are.
I appreciate you picking up what I'm putting down. That's for sure. It's I don't ask to be understood. It's a blessing when I am, and I really thank you for taking the time to say that. So thanks, Nickolas.
Absolutely. The final question of the podcast is,
now hit me with
what does it mean?
That being said, let's get them.
Yeah, this is ready for the sucker punch. What does it mean to live a fulfilling life to you?
To live a fulfilling life means that I left no idea unturned, no idea unshared. Even more so, even more important, I will not die with even good ideas in my head or heart just because I was the person that wasn't capable of creating them. I think that's where the spirit of collaboration and my drive to want to have deep connection with people. I don't know where and when the right time will be, but I know that I'm constantly being bombarded with opportunities from both sides, distribution and creation. And I think that a fulfilling life for me would be that I'm not dying. I'm not leaving this world with any idea in my head, that I've had the ability to share what I think can make this world a better place in a meaningful way and in a collaborative way. And maybe if I get to work with you on it, that's awesome. But if I don't get to work with you on it, and 20 years from now it ends up being, I'll know. And I'm not going to come around. I don't come around. I'm one of those weird creatives who's like, I'm seeing some saucy posts right now on LinkedIn about duplication and people. I mean, I should be so lucky that I worked at MTV at a point where everybody saw how to create unscripted reality. I don't go around saying, "Hey, you stole my idea." Oh, you talked into a camera. How original! We did that in the real world. You stole my. You know what I mean? I don't have that. I don't even think. I'm not even wired that way. And to be really honest, I think that even if I thought I could put energy out there, and I wasn't attached to those ideas, and those ideas still happened, I still get as much excitement about that coming to fruition. So a fulfilling life for me is an inspired life, where I was able to share what I thought could potentially really truly help somebody or a community of people. And a fulfilling life for me would be that.
Awesome. I love it. Vinny, where can people connect with you on the internet? How can they come say hello?
Oh, I appreciate that. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm on the socials now. If they really want to find out where I am, go to the show notes. Look what Nickolas said to go find me. And while you're on the show notes, drop him a 5-star review. I mean, give this guy the hard work that he just put into this episode, right? Let this be the episode that pushes you over, and I know I will be. So if I'm leading by example, feel free to go to the 5-star reviews. And by the way, see if I'm lying. Go ahead. I dare you. And join me in celebrating Nickolas in this podcast. And I really appreciate the space, bud.
Wow, man. Thank you. That means so much. Thanks for being on the show. Check out those links in the show notes. Vinny, till next time.
Yes.
Bye.
That was the episode. You just listened to it. Vinnie Potestivo dropping knowledge bombs. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Share this episode with a friend you admire most. It'll take 5 seconds and it is a great use of your screen time. The real reason you're still here, you want to know the answer to the riddle of the week. How do moths swim? Using the butterfly stroke. Flapping them wings in the water. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next Friday at 6 a.m. Be kind, be strong, be disciplined, and keep up with those New Year's resolutions. We're only a little over, we're 2 weeks in. Stay strong. Take 6 weeks to build a habit. You got this. Bye!